Thanks for the reminder of my student days, the crazy days of the 80s in Australia. It's my great pleasure to come back to Australia. Although Canberra in those days has been very far away for us to reach, my life has mostly surrounding in the students' activism in Sydney. I just, I'm starting to recall whatever we were together with X before. Thanks for the reminder. And I was just looking at his cards that's for the departments of political and social change. This reminded me that, some years ago when I was detained under the Internal Security Act, and during the interrogations, I was asked a question: do you believe in social change? So that was a tricky question, because in my heart, I know they want to ask me whether you believe in revolution. So I told the interrogator, the special branch officers, I said, well, social change happens whether you believe in it or not. It will happen. The introductions of handphone bring social change, faxing machines bring social change, car brings social change, railway brings social change. I say it's irrelevant whether I believe or not. It's going to happen. At the most, you're going to observe how it happens. So that's probably a good start of what happened in Malaysia. I assume most of you take interest, as well as many of my fellow Malaysians here. People are extremely nervous of what's going to happen. First to the Prime Minister, and then to the nation's future as a whole. And because of that, there was some expectation from us in the oppositions, and people want to see an alternative. So I just want to maybe touch more on these few aspects of it, and maybe leave a bit more time for Q&A for people to ask what they really want to know. As you all have seen this recently, the Najibs is becoming more and more unpopular, not only internationally, definitely within Malaysia, and the thing that as a Prime Minister, as a leader, a lot of unexpected things which under his regime. So in normal circumstances, I would say in any other country, I don't think his leadership position is attainable. Well, only last week when I was here, we heard a very damping announcement by the Department of Justice in the United States, reviewing and naming the wrongdoing, and amount of money has been stolen from Malaysian coffer. And even to my surprise, I don't think anyone else, I didn't know how these groups of rascals who have been ripping off people's money develop a high taste of arts, that they are into Van Hall and Monet. So it was something quite bizarre that you have this group of elites that has no qualm in ripping off the people's money, as well as in the international stage. They were acting like nobody business, not only robbing Malaysians' money, but they also trying to rob world cultural heritage. So in these situations, we would like to think, and in fact, I've always been very optimistic that the regime will not last. And Malaysia is one of the very few Southeast Asian countries. From my days of students, we have gone through a very vibrant, very active student movement where we take on half the world, from Kanaki to Papua New Guinea to East Timor to South Africa, Namibia, even Eritrea. Those countries were undergoing very intense struggles of national liberations, as well as to struggle for overthrowing the authoritarian system. So 30 years down the line, I discovered that most of the country that I had ever demonstrated for has been one more or less, I won't say totally liberated, but more or less moving towards a more reasonable and rational government. And to look back my own countries, it is still the same one-party states that's running the show. And that reflects on my life as a form of failure. So I would just like to dedicate the rest of my maybe 15, 20 years to resolve this very resilient authoritarian, autocratic regime. When I say this, I would like to also not to be overly simplistic by saying that Malaysia is something like an iron fist country. It has some rooms, it has potential, it gives certain space for us to express our political dissent. One thing that we have not seen is a real transition of power into a more pluralistic one. Malaysia has a very plural societies, and this is our strength, but unfortunately, politically, it is so monolithic that it has been, for half a century, dominated by one party. Najib has epitomized the problems that we have seen. I don't want to go through the details about what he did and all the corruption scandals. I assume that in the age of information technologies, everyone can get access to that. I probably tried to touch on why he is still around, right? I will say that beside the normal issues about political domination by the ruling parties, but there's also some change. As you all know, UMNO is a centralized, though ethnic base, but power, which has been concentrated very much into the presidents of the party, as well as the presidents of, as well as the Prime Minister. What is different, I mean, to everyone's irony, is that even Mahathir, who has been a 22 years dictator that rule over us, that he also cannot stand the current situations. It just proved one point. It is not the person, it is the system that represses. Right? Mahathir is out of power, he has no influence, he cannot do anything. Mahathir was what he was because he instructed the director, the Inspector General of the police. He can call on to the special branch officers. He could utilize the law enforcement institutions to repress and oppress the people. But once you're not in that chair, whoever sits on the chair can do exactly the same thing. And that's where the system, that's how the system continued to function and it carried on. But that doesn't explain why in the history of Malaysian brand of authoritarianism, There were regular change of leaderships. But at this stage, we seem to be helpless in doing something, or surveyed by any sides, whether be it from the slightly more conservative poll or from the very or even strong poll from the internet, show that Najib did not enjoy more than 20% of the public support. And the fact that he was able to control, it is something that unusual. My thesis is that during Mahathir's day, we are experiencing a booming economy. Mahathir was able to use, or at that time the ruling elites were allowing various forms of privatizations and the growth machineries. And you see people who are enjoying those growth owe their loyalty to the ruling parties. But the difference is now, this growth is no longer there, right? Especially at the time when in the hand of Najib, in the last 2 years, you see the crash of the commodity prices, the major revenue from the government that's very petrol dependent. I was first member of parliament. Petrol revenues almost constitutes nearly half of the government budget. Now it barely covers 25 or 20% of the government budget. It is a very drastic. I only have been member of parliament on my second terms. So you can see there's a drastic reduction. But contradict to this, we're supposed to be doing very bad, but politically, it made Najib very powerful. Because there's only one tagline, which is the Prime Minister office itself. It is not only he is the Prime Minister, he is also the Finance Minister, or the major commission from the public transport to infrastructures to education, all run from the Prime Minister department. He alone take up 45% of the entire annual budgets of the cabinet. So, in that sense, the Prime Minister only need to control a few keys. The Inspector General of the Police, the Attorney General, which is successfully changed. It doesn't matter, the entire AG chamber might not be agreeing that the Prime Minister is not guilty, but as long as you have the Attorney General. And you control the leaders of the Parliament, the speakers, and the party whips. You control your party by sacking your number 2, and you have it. We are now at the situation of bottleneck. The Prime Minister just has to ensure that his man is sitting at the bottleneck. So the discontent or the disagreement can continue to grow, but it will not be able to pass through that bottleneck. Well, that's what he hopes for. So then, that's why we see that despite the increased unpopularities of the Prime Minister and also various behavior which is unacceptable to even member of public, but then because of that, such ability to hold. Yeah, we see now, because of the private sector is basically the economic activities is very, very minimal. And so government funding is concentrated in the Prime Minister's hand. So it was, in fact, perfect what he has inherited from Mahathir, a centralized party machinery, a centralized government structure. But because of that, Mahathir himself did not enjoy such a good time, because at the time of economic boom, yeah, people give you the loyalty as long as they recognize that whom is accountable to you. But at the same time, he's constantly facing new power center that's sponsored by different economic groups, challenging his legitimacy. So, but today, we don't see it anymore. Right? For that reason, I think Mahathir, what's it called? Najib is considered strong, and we have to tackle that, and it is not easy, and I don't have a simple formula. I just want to shift to the opposition sides. There were high hopes for the last 10 years, especially since 2008. The street mobilizations and the rise of public awareness through a very confrontational years since Anwar was sacked and imprisoned, eventually crystallized and matured to reflect in the electoral performance of the opposition. And in 2008, you see almost half of the popular votes went to the opposition. The last election, 2013, we broke through 52% of the public supports in the popular votes because unfortunately we have a very skewed, what's it called, electoral manipulation, where gerrymandering is used heavily to give weight to the government. We didn't manage to change government. I think that was the starting point of Najib's being very, very cautious and very wary about the potential growth of oppositions. 2013, we saw a reversal of what he has promised, although, I mean, what he did was nothing substantial. There were some laws being removed, but then centralized of power continued. Just that we see that after 2003, crackdown re-emerged. I was just calculating no less than 15, 16 lawmakers were charged under sedition, including myself, plus many of the civil society's members who were also facing crackdown. And increasingly there will be arbitrary arrests of people who post some comment on the Facebook, who say something considered nasty to the Prime Minister. They will be picked up. Slowly we are rebuilding the so-called the culture of fears. And that's under Najib, especially the second term of Najib. And we are also seeing that race and religious cuts become much more prominently played out in the recent years. And that's probably our biggest concern. We are quite willing to face all types of political challenge, but as we have seen in many societies, once the ruling parties or the ruling elites found that they were losing legitimacy because of economic performance, because of politically facing internal revolt, then they invoke the ethnic cuts. In Malaysia, probably the ethnic cut has been overplayed. Now, increasingly, the trend is to use religion. And Malaysia has a very entrenched religious institution in our political establishment. I think more than many of our neighboring countries, especially if we compare with Indonesia. So I'm not saying other countries not facing such challenges, but Malaysia in a very, in our social fabric, which is especially susceptible to
to this disturbance. So, and that's part of the reason, and that's probably the background of why eventually, after 2013, we were able to repeat good electoral success, but then the coalition broke apart. Again, over the issues about religious law, and we have very minorities oriented Democratic Action parties decided to break away and cut all ties with the religious oriented Islamic Party because of their insistence of having the Islamic criminal codes to be entrenched into our legal system. My party, as the People's Justice Party, lost charismatic leaders because Anwar went back to jail last year. And he has been the central figures that were able to broker negotiation between the two polarized parties. With his absence, our second generation, second tier leaders were unable in a short time gain the respect and the support of our coalition's partners, and we were unable to pull the whole thing together. Our challenge for me and also for the main leaderships of the People's Justice Party is how do we go back to the negotiating table to ensure that there was some form of agreement and cooperation among the oppositions. I say that not purely because of the electoral gain. I mean, the electoral result of the Sarawak election, later on the two by-elections say clearly that no oppositions standing alone could ever achieve the positions of strength to challenge the incumbent, which has been entrenched for decades. That awareness is there, but it requires maturities and rational thinking among other oppositions that we have to put aside this very fierce religious or ethnic narrative to come back to the agenda of reforms, to come back to challenge a corrupted, unaccountable leaders. But it's easier said than done. We are also facing a very, very challenging economic, political atmosphere globally, where the religious issues have been played out, and they were generally suspicious and fierce in the global atmosphere, in the global climate. And we have to survive in that context, how to do it. And that is quite difficult, but that also doesn't mean that we should not try. And the reason compelled us to continue to do this, especially for my parties, is that it is not just because we want to maintain the electoral gain, but also because we understand that the alternative of inaction is much more serious. We do not want to risk a situation where the ruling elites, in protecting themselves, unleash such confrontation in the societies. Once the genie is out of the bottle, I'm not sure how we're going to put it back. And being pluralistic is our assets, but it can also be our burden. So we don't want a continuation of that. To bring everybody together in the same platform is not merely about trying to win election, but it is also to ensure that this platform is the starting point for us to have an honest, sincere, truthful dialogue for nation building. And that is to me is the biggest challenge. It is not easy, and we are facing orthodox and dogmatic leaders. But I would say that it is nothing unique. I mean, that part is nothing unique. In many countries, we have people like that. And the only things that electorally we are very unfortunate. If we have a system like Australia where you have a preferential system, then we could have all deal with it after the elections, and we just have to discuss how to sort our preferences. But in the Malaysian situation, opposition electoral discipline has to be very high because we have to sort out the candidates and policies and agree on the charters and manifesto way before the election. So I think the key now is for us to come to that. And thanks to also to Najib, the leaderships of the ruling parties, UMNO, is two split. We have Muhyiddin and even Mahathir coming out from the parties, and there is a possibility of a new either political movement or political party emerge. And it's helpful for party like People's Justice Party because it will be something like a centralist party. It will help us to consolidate this center. Definitely there's a lot of questions about how could own enemy work together, etc., etc. I think that's something that we have been debating. But the issues here is not about me being imprisoned by Mahathir before. The issues is not about whether Anwar and Mahathir can be friends. The issues here is that how do we move into a transition where the power is no longer monopolized in a single person or a single party's hand. And for that, we take a bigger thinking, and we have to have a bigger heart to go through it together. People say, can we trust Mahathir? I'm not sure. I don't think it's up to me to answer. But I can only say, in order to see Malaysia move to a nominal democracies that at least we can see some form of exchange of power, a regular change of ruling parties, we require extraordinary steps, which has been experienced by many of our Southeast Asian neighbors about a decade and a half ago. Malaysia missed that wave where we see Korea, Taiwan, Indonesia, Philippines move towards that. We have to start here. And I think Najib's scandal just been provided us a window to put focus back and to create the condition for change. I think I probably stop here first. I'm sure what I glossed through a lot of details missing, but I will leave to the question and answer to try to answer those queries. Thank you very much. Thanks for paying attention.